happened. And Crystal's always on time early, and you had so much energy earlier. So I'm like, where is she? But sometimes spirit speaks and duty calls.
Yes, so I had my last clients of the day who needed a little extra time, and I needed to give that to them. And so I'm so grateful that Mandee understands because she's been there too. And so just because the timer runs out doesn't necessarily mean that everything is done, and we still have to be there and listen and talk and get to know our people. And I'm so grateful actually to be able to have had that conversation with my clients. So I thank you guys very much for being patient and tuning in to us anyway. So I appreciate you all. Mandee, it has been a long 2 weeks. What have you been doing?
Sister, it has been a long 2 weeks. I want to hear a little bit about your journey too, for sure. Hey, Earth, what's up? I see Ursula tuned in. Hi. I'm sure we have lots of other people jumping on. Past 2 weeks have been really amazing for me overall. I've been doing this 44-day challenge with Infinite Yoga and Wellness. One of my soul sisters, Danny Marshburn, is spearheading that. She's one of our amazing sea goddesses as well. And it's just been an opportunity to be like a little bit more devotional and self-disciplined. And I've noticed I've been a little more quiet. I haven't wanted to like be like on Facebook as much, or just little things, because I'm finding myself dropping into kind of the potency of the moment. And it's been really, really nice. And I've been enjoying that. And we've got retrograde going on right now, and a new moon in Libra, which is all about finding your balance. And I feel those energies coming in. I feel like it's been, chaotic chapter past year for everybody on all kinds of different ways. And I'm just feeling like the fall, the release, and it feels nice and nestling in. So I can't complain. Finding more love and excitement and balance. And it's been good. But there's definitely been quite a few Mercury retrograde hiccups happening too. So it's definitely some chaotic trickster energy out there. What about
There
you?
definitely is weird stuff. So the last time we talked, you were telling me about that thing that you were starting, where you were going to start like doing some more exercises and to, journal a little bit more. And it was funny because I started journaling after that. And so I have come up with some of my coolest manifestations from this journaling. Okay, first off, I had COVID. We all know if you went on my page. That's why I've been MIA for 2 weeks. It wasn't Mandee. Once again, it's all me. And that was actually a little bit rough, okay? I've been sick before in my life, but I've never been sick like that before in my life. And so that was like a really weird situation. I don't know how you feel when you have like a head cold or sinus issues or stuff like that, but this like almost took completely my ability to hear spirit away from me for a good 2 weeks. And so it was like last week was my first week coming back. But it was like once the fever started, it just was all downhill from there. And the only way that I can describe it is it would be almost like somebody, if somebody took like your third eye and like covered it with a brick wall. And so I literally wasn't able to get anything. And it was so frustrating to me because I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I started journaling. And so I was like, okay, Crystal, whether we can hear them or not, they're here. We know this. And so we're going to start like journaling. And essentially I did it kind of like spirit writing in the sense that I just sat and I allowed whatever needed to come off my chest to come off my chest. And some beautiful, amazing manifestations have come from that. And in the midst of that, this is going to be for all of you amazing people out there who are listening and going through your own path changes and feeling like you're not making the goals in your life that you want to make in your goals. This is one of those beautiful divine messages. They said if you have already experienced it, if it was already a thought base in your head and it is already a goal that you have in mind, then it's divinely written on your scroll. You can't not receive it. I was like, whoa. So every freaking goal that I have in my life, sometimes we get so stuck in like the end result of what we want that goal to look like that we forget to kind of rearrange and see and like really love ourselves for how far we've come in the midst of the journey. We get so like stuck in that path and what we're focusing on because we're not focusing on the now. And I learned through this journaling process that first off, I need to slow down with myself a little bit and just allow things to come. But also I need to give myself a lot of patience, a lot of love. I need to give myself a pat on the back. And I need to understand that even though like our ego is still good, we don't necessarily, it's not just, ego isn't just bad. We have all those yucky parts to our ego, but we also have these beautiful parts. And sometimes we just don't take the time to really love and utilize ourselves and where we've come from and how far we've come and just how much we've experienced and brought closure to in our own lives. And it is so important right now with all these things that Mandee just talked about and our retrogrades and, you know, new moons and full moons. It's so very important for you guys all to kind of take a step back and kind of reinvent yourself right now. And it doesn't even mean looking at your goals differently. It's just looking at yourself differently and really trying to hone in on just how far you've come. Whether you're where you want to be or not, it doesn't matter because it's already written on your scrolls. If you can see it, it can happen. Keep working towards it. You're not a failure just because it hasn't happened yet. And so it's all there. It's like God's given you a like deposit to your bank account. You just haven't received the deposit yet. Somewhere along the line, there's that retrograde screwing it up. So you're just waiting on it. It's already there. You're just waiting for it to be like dropped right in. So that's kind of what my 2 weeks have been like. I decided to make something good out of COVID, even though it was the absolute worst thing I've ever been through. I don't ever want to get it again. But at the same time, I'm grateful because I didn't have it as bad as what a lot of other people I know have. And so my body did a great job of fighting off that stupid COVID. We're still sick. We still have fevers on and off, and it's still a pain in our butt, but it's not near as bad as what it was. So I'm grateful, and I thank you, Mandee, for giving me the space to get better.
Always. And I was just, loving you and praying for you and glad you're okay and happy and feeling healthier now. And it's so interesting. You said something that I think is so potent and important, especially during these retrograde times. But at all times, like I think I learned first from maybe like Dr. Joe Dispenza or Bruce Lipton or someone like that. But they say like if you I feel like you don't have enough time in your day, then you need to like meditate for like the amount, as in like a much amount of time as you feel like you don't have or something, or like twice as much and all of this, because it makes sense because we have to slow down. We have to become more active and we have to learn how we want to respond to the situations around us. I think that's what these retrograde periods do for us. We can't always be in bloom. We have wonderful goals. We have wonderful aspirations. We have wonderful things that we're working on. But if we look at just the moon cycle in general, half of it is new moon energy and half of it is full moon energy. Half of it we invite in the new, half of it we release, and then we reevaluate and we grow and we go from there. So these retrogrades that we get 3 times a year are for our souls to come back and reevaluate, reprioritize, show, refocus, like show ourselves how we're showing up and give ourselves the opportunity to zoom out and look from that higher perspective. So I love that you like utilize this time to do that. And I believe very much too, spirit will always connect with you, even just a little bit. But when we're sick or hurt or not feeling well, it is not nearly as direct as it was because it's all about going within. So they'll give you a couple little hints here and there, but mostly to redirect you back within yourself. So it's pretty cool that all that journaling poured out of you during this time.
Yeah, it was pretty, I love my journal. Like, I really have to put this journal on my page so people can reach out to this woman and get it. She kind of makes them for fun, but I had a client make this journal for me. So it's like, it's not only personally made for me, but it has the best energy. And she puts these little pictures in throughout the whole thing that it's like, it says different things and it has different meanings. And she made my logo in this journal. It's absolutely beautiful. And so it was just funny because before I had written in it a couple times, and then this time it was just like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to say these are the things that we want. And then the next day I just went back through and I was like, okay, this is one of these things, and these are all the feelings associated with it. And I was able to feel for the first time, I think, where I'm going in my life and what I want to kind of utilize with what that feels like and why. And so it was actually pretty cool. I also opened up in those moments to the things that I kind of like, they were a little bit like, okay, Crystal, we got to get our shit together a little bit. And I like them for that, but also I don't like them for that. I don't know if any of you have that. But they're like, okay, so like when you're talking smack about this situation or you're talking smack about this, really you're talking smack about yourself because this is really what you want. You're just calling it something different. And so I had to sit back for a moment and I had to be like, okay, touche. And also everybody like channels differently, and Crystal has to get that through her head. And some of the gifts that I have, other people don't have, but it doesn't make them right or wrong. It just means they're different from other people's. And so it really irks me sometimes seeing the way spirit is portrayed. We've had this conversation numerous times. It really frustrates me. But also I have to take into consideration that the people who are talking about what they're receiving are only receiving from their understanding. And so I can't really be mad at them for only having this understanding when for some reason they don't know how or want to, I guess, open into seeing it in different ways. And because spirit can feel very negative, but also not be negative, just like, sometimes we can meet people who are absolutely beautiful people, but then other people are like, well, they suck and I hate them. It's the same way on the other side. There's different layers to everybody and everything, and they kind of are like, yeah, you've got to keep that into your understanding field, Crystal, because you're not always right, so we're going to hold you accountable. And I'm like, crap, I hate that, but at the same time, I also needed it. Or else those goals that I have can't come into fruition.
And like, who would you rather call you out? Would you rather like random people or someone who loves you, or would you rather be like your higher self and your angel team like calling you out? Like, nobody wants to be told like it's time to grow, you're doing it wrong, you got to mature, you got to grow up, you got to relook at this. So we all have to do that along our ascension journey, along this like life path. We don't have to, but it doesn't go very well for us when we don't. Every single human that I know, even some of the whatever, I guess, worst of the worst, if you want to call it that I've come across, has this little spark of light in them where they want to be better and do better each day, or they want to grow more, or learn more, or have some sort of dream or goal or aspiration. And in order for all of us to get there, we've got to figure our way around that. We got to go through a lot of growing pains, and we got to screw up, and then we've got to hold ourselves accountable and figure it out and learn. And like, one of the gateways is really that self-forgiveness, and the fact that we're so hard on ourselves and we're constantly operating in guilt, criticism, fear, and shame. It keeps us low. I do think there's a certain aspect of that that's needed just a little bit to keep us humble, of course, but I think like we're really killing it. It's a little overdrive.
I do too, man. It was just talked about in the reading that I just had. Hi, Sophia. Hi, Glenda. I was just talking about it well, I wasn't sure it was.
Sophia.
They were just talking about...
Sorry, I just saw them all too, catching up.
It's like so cool because, sometimes people who are very like analytical in how they see things, it's very black and white with their mentality of life. Like there's right and there's wrong. And then you have these empathic, people over here on the other spectrum who are just like, oh, it's all love and I just want to give everybody this, give everybody that. If we could just realize that both sides of the spectrum are exactly the balance that we need in our own lives, and pull those things together. I always kind of make jokes about this, and I'm like, okay, so it doesn't make sense if you don't believe in God, but I'm going to say God. I'm like, even God believes in tough love if you want to think about it, because we wouldn't have the karma and the lessons in our own lives every single day if God himself didn't hold us accountable for our own energy that we put out there, because we essentially are the energy that comes from that matter. And so essentially he has to hold us accountable because that's his growth too, if you want to look at it from an outward source. And so it's this vicious circle and cycle that we're always holding each other accountable because we're not holding ourselves accountable sometimes. And so it's that reflection that we have to learn how to see. And so we have to have this beautiful balance of like, yes, everything's love and it stems from love and everybody's beautiful, because I actually believe everybody's beautiful on this planet. I think that we can turn on that light or keep that light off. That's up to us. But ultimately, nobody's born in complete darkness, I guess, in my eyes. They can choose to be really shitty people, but that's on them. But then we also have to understand that, part of that balance and part of that boundary system is looking at somebody and saying, well, you know what, that doesn't feel right to me, and that's not what I want in my life. Or what you just said to me completely contradicts what you said to me yesterday in the same conversation, and so what is it? That's putting it back on somebody's lap and holding them accountable for their words, and that's what spirit does for me. And I actually would rather my higher self do it, because my higher self is more honest than any human I've ever met, and I appreciate their honesty, because sometimes I need that. I need to go, oh, Crystal, like, ouch, that really hurt, sometimes, to really get it into me good the first time. And so they say it in a way that's just like, it's this weird spark of, it's like lighting a match inside of me that's this beautiful inner reflection that just hits me automatically, and I'm able to see all aspects of what they're saying. And then I'm like, oh yeah, crap, been doing that for a long period of time. So that's part of that growth thing you've been talking about for 3 years that I've completely ignored. We're going to work on that a little bit better. That's essentially where I'm at right now, but I've begged for that. I've begged them to help me see. I've begged them to help me get balanced. I've begged them to, hold me accountable so I can grow, because I don't want to live in emotional traumatic cycles anymore. I want that door to be closed. I know we're always going to have to deal with some aspect of those things, but I don't want it to be something that triggers me in my life anymore, because I just don't, my adrenal system is just sick of it. It is so sick of the ups and downs and the spikes.
What makes us susceptible to illness and disease is the stress, is the constant pumping of worry, and the cortisol and the adrenaline running through our veins all the time. That's there for like an emergency response. If like a lion's chasing us and we're going to be eaten, or like, we're going to be murdered, we're going to feel that. We're going to know that intuitively. We're not supposed to be feeling that way if we're, worried about paying a bill or getting something done for our boss or for work or whatever it is. We're not supposed to be pumping those same fear hormones, and they're wreaking havoc on our bodies. And then we're creating them though ourselves via our thoughts. We're the ones who allow the stress to come in. Like, yeah, we might have a boss who's horrible and demanding of a lot of things on us, but ultimately it's up to us how we respond to it. And just like you were kind of talking about earlier, we may want someone to change. We may want someone to see something differently, but we can only do our best and lead by example. And if it gets to the point where you're giving too much or you're pushing too much for somebody else to see something from a different perspective, then that's your opportunity to take a breath, take a beat, take a step back and see how you're responding to this and why you're putting that energy around like that.
So, Sophie, I have to, Sophia is just the cutest person. I love her. She goes, I have a feeling my higher self loves calling me out. It's like watching a toddler trip. Aw, so cute. She fell trying. And I get that, Sophia. I feel that way too sometimes. It's like, oh, watch it. She's going to do it. We told her not to do it. And then I do it. And they're like, oh, at least she got out of the box and has attempted at doing this life a little bit differently. But the thing is, you're trying. And they do love it that you're trying, because there's really no tripping and falling per se. There's more just getting back up and trying in a different way next time. And you have been on this beautiful journey for so long that like you have tried 10 times over. And that's really what this is like. It's trial and error in our lives to find out what works best for us and what makes us feel best about ourselves, to give us the peace at night so we can lay our head on the pillow and sleep, without our brains constantly taking focus and hyper-focusing on every thought, feeling, emotion that we've had, not only through that day, but also 10 years down like the road. So it's just one of those things that we're in this constant trying to pull ourselves back in. And it's cute because I have like this hyper anxiety brain. And I tell people like ADD brain to me, and I'm not a doctor, please don't hate me for this. I believe fully the ADD symptoms or ADHD signs go hand in hand with spiritual gifts, because I myself could be diagnosed with ADD too. I know this because my husband was diagnosed. I was there for the diagnosis. I was there for the test. I know how it's done. And I've also I work very close hand with different therapists and counselors and all these people. We've talked about this. But at the same time, if I didn't have that ADD brain or that ADHD brain, I would not be able to channel all the information that comes through for me the way that it comes through for me, and be able to spit it out of my mouth and put it all together, because it's thoughts, feelings, emotions, imagery, ego, senses, all of those things coming at the same time. And it's my job to translate all of those things at that time. And so without that brain that's able to see, feel, experience, smell, taste at the same time, I wouldn't be able to download it and be able to channel. And so how can I say that's a disorder when to me it is my gift? It's all in how we see what we have going on in our life. So yes, a lot of people get stuck in their anxiety, and a lot of people get stuck in their thought process, and a lot of people struggle with that. But it's really trying to retrain how your brain sees certain specific things in your life so that it actually can be utilized as the gift that you have, instead of hinder you and not being able to really focus and click with this group of people specifically versus this whole world of people over here. If I were to have just stayed stuck in the box of what Crystal knew before, I would maybe have 30, 40 people that I hung out with all the time and, you know, maybe went to bars or went to parties or did stuff like that, but I wouldn't be able to connect with the thousands of people I connect with and be able to sit with them. And so I choose to see those things as gifts instead of disorders. And we have to retrain ourselves to have that mental, emotional, spiritual peace and that manifestations and those, you know, slowing down and being able to actually, you know, meditate ourselves into a calmer state so we can see for ourselves clearly. Because essentially we're just picking up on all the craziness around us. Brain will always take over. Like all the time your brain will take over if you let it.
If you let it, that's the thing. It's supposed to be our faithful servant, and it's kind of gotten out of control. And meditation is all about knowing thyself and going within, and that's what it's all about. And they're all just like we were talking about earlier, your ego is your best friend, your gumption. It can be there to support you. It's you. It's all of your experiences and knowledge that you've come across in this lifetime. Your soul is the essence of you that you've carried through eternity, through every single lifetime. And the two together, actually, really your experience in this lifetime and other lifetimes without the emotional charge is what creates the wisdom. So we often find a lot of wisdom after healing because we've released whatever emotions were attached to it, and it simply becomes what was and part of you and your foundation and your wisdom and your tool belt or your experience in this lifetime. But it can be really hard. It's hard. It's not easy to get to those points. And when we're feeling stuck, it's because there are energies wanting to either heal and rest and renew a little bit, and it's important to give those time, or there's something else that's wanting to come out and be born out of you or released out of you, and it's screaming for your attention in order to do that. If you're stuck or you're stagnant, there's a reason for it, but there's a lot of ways in order to kind of wake and shake yourself out of that. And I love that Sophia and Glenda were talking about being in Earth School, because it's so true. Forever school. That's what we come down here to do as souls. I believe very much that we choose to come down into this world, into this 3D reality, in order to learn, grow, ascend, taste, feel, breathe, experience heartache and love and loss and all of these things that we don't feel on an eternal level when we're just floating around in our magical little soul bodies in complete divine love.
Yeah, I think that like a lot of people separate that. I don't know if it's that they don't understand it or if they just don't think about it. Like we don't generally sit around and think every single day about what a spirit experience on the other side. I know that a lot of people try to figure out what heaven is like or what people think heaven is like, or, you know, some of those things. But I don't know that a lot of people understand that love is what the soul feels on the other side. And so there isn't any other feelings. So when spirit comes through and they give those emotional, like, you know, when they channel, I let them come through with their personality traits. And so sometimes their personality traits, they'll say, you know, I'm frustrated, or I'm this, or I'm that. And that's true. That is exactly how they would feel if they were talking to you on that level. But I've also had some spirit come through and they were like, okay, you know how bad it is for me wanting to be really pissed off at this situation and not being able to freaking feel pissed, because all they're allowing me to feel right now is love. And that's really trying to frustrate me too. Like it's this catch-22 for spirit, because they feel all of this love for every situation because they see it so very much different. And I think humans kind of forget the fact that we're here for a reason. And part of that growth doesn't always feel good. Some of that growth feels painful and hurtful and frustrating and angry, but it's actually such a blessing to feel all of those feelings, because at the end of the day, all of those things are stemmed from love. If we didn't love a person, we couldn't be disappointed in them. If we didn't love a situation, we couldn't be sad when it came to an end. And so there's all, that's like all based off from what love is, and at the core of who we are, that's where we essentially go back to. And so all those feelings exist for a reason. But we just feel immense peace. I don't know if that's what I want to say, like peace on the other side. But it's such a weird thing that I don't think a lot of people feel like, because it's easy to get depressed and frustrated when we're here going through it and forget that that's actually a blessing for us to feel. That's one of those things that I just love that spirit has taught me. Like even holding my hand right now, if I were spirit, I wouldn't even be able to feel my hand on my own skin. And so it's just, everything is such a cool blessing for us that we don't know. I don't think we think about those little things sometimes. Breath in my lungs, like someday I'm not going to have that ability. Like when I'm spirit, I'm not going to be able to feel my breath anymore. And that actually makes me like teary-eyed, because it's like, you know, these little things that we do through our daily basis that are just so normal for us to do that we don't stop and think about. Those are such cool, amazing gifts that we actually have. And so that's
These are
actually
like
one
the
of the
first
things.
things we
And
come down here to experience. Like you're right.
yeah,
We take him
oh,
for granted.
it's craziness. And I hope that some people like actually start to do that, because in that it'll actually help you pull back, like Mandee said earlier, and like come to refocus and come to knowledge and come to like a space of being able to have that clarity. When you really start to think about those things, it helps you have that balance in those bad situations that are really causing you that fight or flight, or that dramatic, or that angry, or that whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, but at least I'm here to feel it. You know, someday I'm not going to be able to experience this because I'm going to be over there with everything that I love, and it's not going to be this way. Do we want to feel those things? Not necessarily, but it's still a blessing to be able to experience it.
Absolutely. Sophia said when she was little, she would stay up late thinking about what comes after death. And each time she would start bawling, crying, almost like she was blocked from seeing. And I was kind of giggling because I'm like, oh, yeah, I totally would stay up all the time thinking about what is this? Where are we coming from? Why? What's happening? And like so many of my life experiences and things, and so many of us who are interested in this path, and us empaths and highly sensitives and light workers, and those just wanting to come in and kind of make a difference, we did think about all of those things. And sometimes our souls will block us, especially when we're younger, to keep us safe if we're scared. Because if we tell the universe and our angels that we're in overwhelm or we're in danger or we're afraid, they're going to do what they can to respond to us. So a lot of times people will shut down their gifts when they're younger, when they're children, because they're scared if they saw a ghost or if they heard a voice or if something comes in, and the angels and your higher self respond and give you a lot of times what you want. So a lot of people along their path, when they take a few moments and sit in meditation and chill a little bit, they can unlock those gifts again. They can release it and say, hey, I'm a little older, a little wiser, a little more mature. I invite you to come in, you know, with love and grace. And I release the fear around it. So that's something that we can always rewrite and always re-invite back in during these retrograde times, especially. What's up, Nicole?
Like,
It's so
I was
funny.
gonna
My
say,
son's 7 and has been asking me about this lately. Awesome.
I love when I hear that. I love when I hear about kids that see spirit, because it can be really traumatic for them, especially depending on what their gifts may be and what kind of a healer they might be in the future. Sometimes, like Mandee said, it can be pretty traumatic for them, and they do want to shut that down, and it's scary. But I absolutely love how much our children can teach us in their gifts when we don't even know that they actually have gifts. Like if I would have actually listened to my son talk to me, sometimes when he was littler, I actually would have like realized just how much he was getting from spirit when I was like, oh, you're just saying creepy stuff, kid, knock it off. We're not having this conversation.
Like their ancestors, their spirit guides, like so many times, like parents will report that they're like, yeah, our kids are just like talking to so-and-so, and they'll tell me about like my grandfather who they didn't know. And I'm like, the veil is so thin for kids, because I believe when we come in, choose when we come in, we get to be really held in between the womb space and the spirit world. And then when we're little, we're really held by spirit a lot. And like, we're not that crazy. We're not talking to things we can't see. We haven't had all the drama and traumas and exposures and conditioning to think the only way that we think at this time. And so there's like a much broader perspective in many other dimensions and realities that we're aware of and we're able to tune into when we're young and when we're innocent and when we're in a more pure state. And like I said, this is something you can totally open back up, because you're just being respected by your higher self and by spirit when you're asked to shut it down.
Glenda said that her son is having similar experiences that she used to have, and that she's thankful that she's here to talk to him about it. I agree. I didn't have any, my family thought I was insane. They thought I was crazy. They told me I was crazy. They told me I was lying, that I was making stuff up and all that other stuff. But also, I'm going to say that that like kind of rolled downhill, so to speak, with me, because when my son was little and he talked about stuff, I did the same thing inevitably in the beginning of our relationship that was done to me, because that's what I was taught to do and how to see. And, you know, nobody wants to know that you're the crazy one. You're not seeing anything, kid. Go back to bed. And he was seeing stuff. So, I mean, I wish I could go back and change that, but also we've had a lot of conversations, so there's no reason to change it. He understands, he gets it, and I don't think he's crazy now. But at the
And it was
same
all
time, it's
perfect
like,
back then. And you were like attachment theory
yes,
is real. If you're interested in that, if you're interested in parenting, being a healthier parent for yourself, or just learning about your own conditioning, study the attachment theory, because we
mm-hmm,
parent the same exact way that we were parented our first entire year of birth. And it's in our
yep,
subconscious because we remember it because we were recording it at that time. And that can be actions, it can be words that you use, it can be things that you do, it can be a lot of different things. So I'm glad you brought light to that, because that's like a nice resource out there if you're interested in studying yourself and the way you show up in relationships more. And if you did screw up before, it's okay. It's all perfect. Like Crystal, your son, obviously, we talk about this all the time. Souls, we choose our parents, we choose our lessons. So your son chose to go through that as well, just like you did. So it's an opportunity to meet yourself with love and forgiveness and some zero balance, and start fresh and new and keep moving forward, and know that it was all perfect and protecting you at the time. You know, you didn't do anything wrong. It's okay.
no. No, and it's really such a beautiful experience to essentially like allow your children into, I mean, because once again, I was a very honest parent. Some people don't think I was a good parent, and still to this day. I was a very honest parent with him, and I was like, look, yo, my first job is to be your parent. That's my first job. You know, if you do something wrong, obviously there's going to be consequences to whatever you do. You also have to understand I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to try to understand where you're coming from, but you got to understand that I can be disappointed in a situation and how you handled it, okay? And so we'll cross that bridge once we get there, but we always have to have open communication. And from that, essentially, we can become friends. And he was my best friend. The kid is 100% my best friend. I absolutely love him. He is a wonderful, amazing, caring, charismatic, empathic human being with a whole lot of gumption and stubbornness. And I appreciate that. But at the same time, like, you know, not every kid works the same. You have to do with what your child needs versus what somebody else's child needs. And so the way you were raised isn't really going to probably work for your kid at the end of the day, because they're different children. And so that is a beautiful experience when we have our own kids, to kind of grow and be like, okay, what did I like about parenting? What didn't I like about parenting? What would I want to do different? How did this make me feel? How didn't this make me feel? And then kind of grow from that, and then fine tune it as your children get older and get a voice, and then try to just go from there. And I really felt so comfortable having those open communications with him, because I was able to say, hey, when this happened to you, I felt this way, and I'm sorry if I made you feel this way. How did it make you feel? You know, we were able to open up and actually talk about those things and address them in our lives. And so there's not necessarily, I don't look back and regret them now. I did for a very short period of time before jumping down this train, but I don't now, because we have talked about it and we've opened those lines of communication. And so essentially anything that's needed to be said up until this time has been said, and I appreciate that part of parenting that Spirit taught me to do. Because without Spirit, I wouldn't be the mom that I ended up being. They taught me how to be a mom. So I'm grateful for them.
Aw, that's awesome. I'm not a mom yet in this lifetime, but I am
She is a
gifted.
mom. She's got the most beautiful puppies ever, and they are her children.
I'm a dog mom. And I'm gifted. I'm gifted to have seen a lot of past lives where I've been a mom, and work with a lot of moms, and I get to see trauma, and I get to see when it's imprinted, and so much of that is in childhood through experiences, and I can see it live when it's happening, imprinting on someone, or if it's something that's hanging around their biofield from a long time ago. And just know, if you went through any sort of childhood trauma, or if you are having a hard time forgiving yourself for certain things, there are always opportunities to learn, and triggers are just opportunities to heal. And even if you're struggling with something as severe as PTSD or anxiety every day, there's still hope for all of that, and resources for all of that too. Just like hang in there and know that it's all happening the way it's supposed to be, and that there is peace and light and freedom out there.
See, Mandee, I feel like you are a mom in this life. I just think that you're like a mom to everybody,
I'm like a
is how
mom
I
to
see it. I really feel like you take in strays, and I really think that you're just like Mother Earth, essentially, is how I have always felt to you. You just hold everybody and embrace everybody in love. And to me, that's such a nurturing type of energy. It's so maternal. And so, I don't know, maybe in this time space, you weren't supposed to have your own kids for whatever reason. And I really think it's kind of to take care of all of us that still need that mom. So, like, thank you for parenting me. I appreciate it.
I learned, we lead by example, and I had to learn how to reparent myself, and it's something that I'm able to help other people with a little bit. And yeah, I was born with it. I was like that kid who was like a bit of a leader and always there, like helping and nurturing and whatever. It comes naturally to me, and if all of us just follow our natural callings, we can plug into this grid pretty easily. Oh, I'm getting so much love.
See?
Yes. Nikki, yeah, for sure. So, love you all, no doubt about it. And I don't know, all I can do is be me, right? And honor what comes through. And I do get to channel angels a lot and the Divine Mother and talk to them. So I get some
Thank
hints
you,
every
Heather. I do. It's funny because, some people have it and some people just don't. And that's completely fine. If that's what your life is, that's what your life is. But it's really funny because, you are just a mom. And I think that's one of the reasons why you hold people in their space of understanding. And if that's not the most mom thing to do, I don't know what is. That's quite literally what every child on the planet needs, is just to be held in their space until they get through the temper tantrum or the meltdown or the breakdown or whatever else that they're experiencing. And it's so very cool to meet somebody who is so very nurturing and caring for all people, because it teaches me to be more nurturing and caring, because I really didn't have that in me when I first started. I was really reserved, and so it was actually harder for me to be like you, and you've kind of taught me how to do that in all of our conversations. It's a cool experience to be connected with you because of those things. So.
Well, it's an honor to be connected with you too, sister, and thank you. I appreciate all the love. And it got me thinking, I wish I knew who said it, but I listened to this quote the other day that said, children and people, we don't carry trauma because we were traumatized or because we went through something traumatic. We carry trauma because we were left alone to deal with the trauma. And we were left alone after the trauma. And there's so many times where if we just held each other during it or talked it out or had a debriefing or something, that it can release trauma or stop it from being imprinted upon you. And a lot of times, sometimes the most traumatic or scariest things are the things that almost happened or the things that could have happened or might have happened that scared us. And then we get caught in that state of being traumatized, but it didn't actually happen. So then there's a fear there of what if? Because a lot of times if you fully go through it, then you're like, well, I know what happened. I went all the way through it. But if it's something that just scared you or almost could happen, that keeps a lot of people bound and caught in a little bit of limbo.
Yeah. I know a lot of situations from clients and people that I even know that they're more stuck in the shoulda, woulda, coulda versus the actual experience that happened. And I myself too have talked a little bit about some of the CPTSD that I have experienced in my own life. And I still get caught up on it sometimes because it's still very strange to me how I can be so reactive on an emotional level and almost have no control sometimes over my emotional level, because all of it happens when I'm sleeping essentially, and it causes me I go through bouts of 6 months at a time where I can't get any sleep at all. But it's weird to me because this wasn't physical abuse. This was more mental, emotional, traumatic abuse of what played out around me versus what I didn't see. And so it's almost like, how could I have missed every red flag? How could I have allowed these things to happen? How could I have misjudged this character, this situation? How could I have essentially terrified, because now I know what this person is capable of, and it's almost like, shoot, these dreams that I have are essentially being murdered over and over and over again from the same situation, just in different ways. And it's so weird how our brain gets stuck in something that never took place. I'm fully safe right now in my life. I am safe. There is no way that they can get me or harm me or anything. I'm fully safe. And so what causes our brain to react to, that trigger or that situation the way that it does? And it's essentially, I think, triggers from the past lives, past experiences that we've had in this life, or something along those lines that keeps our brain so hyper-focused on that trauma.
And I think too, sometimes we go through it because we are in a safe enough place to finally release it, to finally lay it down, to finally keep taking a look at it and let it go a little. And like I said, sometimes it's the almost, and like a lot of times with like emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse, or even like I said, that kind of, there must be somebody in here who's having a hard time with their boss. I keep getting a lot of like work stuff. It's that impending like, what if I fuck up? What if I screw up? What if I do this? Like, what's going to happen? Like, they're going to throw me out, or I'm going to be all alone, or it's going to come down to some sort of need that you think you need not being met. And so when you're clearing, when you're trying to invite in, releasing some of this trauma, it's important to just breathe with it and recondition and say, okay, I cut this cord a little bit more today. It's in the past. Like, it did happen. It was terrible, but I am safe now. And I ask, I like Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael, please continue to surround me in white and blue light and protect me. Please take your sword and cut this cord. The cord doesn't mean it never happened. Like, of course, you're a conscious human being. It happened. It just means, like we were talking about before, you cut the emotional energy to it and you just gain the wisdom and the lesson from it. And you say, you know what? I get to be present today. Yeah, that almost happened and that was terrible and that sucked and it wasn't fun, but it doesn't deserve to run the rest of my life. And anything could happen at any time. So I might as well just stay present for the ride for as long as I'm here. And it takes a long time to get to that point, but those little tiny conversations are what help us to rewire and reprogram our subconsciouses.
Absolutely. I love talking to you about this stuff because you've worked with it, you've seen it, you've addressed it, you've seen different variables, different people. You've worked with mothers, you've worked with people who have been in traumatic situations. So it's always beautiful to hear what your experience is regarding these things and why it may take place, because I know that's something that people struggle with. I feel like a lot of us want to know why. And then we get so stuck on the why that we just don't allow ourselves to move forward with some of the actual process or thoughts that can come to the surface if we allow it. And so once again, we're fighting our brains to kind of essentially see things that we're not able to see in the moment, but we're focusing on the things that never took place. So it's just such a weird thing.
Yeah, if you're caught on those loops or you're feeling stuck, do something to physically change your energy. Get up and go for a walk. Go clean up the beach or go for a walk on the side of the road and clean something up. Go be of service. Go volunteer. Go do something where you can get the heck out of your own thoughts and your own shitstorm and your own story that's happened to you throughout your life. Put yourself in a different position. And then often, even if it's just 15 minutes, an hour, a couple hours a day, you come back with a totally different perspective. You come back with a totally different energy and you're able to shift. We are supposed to compartmentalize a little bit. We're not supposed to dwell on the same thing over and over and over again. Does it deserve its time? Does it deserve to be seen and heard? Of course. But a lot of times, especially us highly sensitive and empaths, man, we can get caught on loops for a long time. And everyone wants to know how to interrupt that and bring yourself back out into your own light, because it never feels good getting caught on those loops.
So I always ask myself, how you just said that was so beautiful. It was like, does it deserve our time? Does it deserve our focus? Absolutely it does. It's just how much focus are we going to give to it? And that's kind of where I allow it until it gets hyper-focused. And I have learned that my brain really likes to hyper-focus on so many stupid things that I don't necessarily feel like it should be hyper-focusing on, which are generally scenarios that haven't even taken place. Why? Because, hi, my name is Crystal. I am a drama addict, and it has been this many days since my last experience with drama. And so essentially, I get myself so caught up in the drama of things that could, would, should, or whatever, that I'm having these feuds in my head with people that aren't even there. And so I'm like, and I should say this, and if this is what they say.
So many people fight with people all day, like some right in front of me in the coffee line, and then they take out all their repressed anger all day in their own heads fighting with people that they don't even know. I'm so glad you brought that up.
It is craziness. And so I allow it for a second, but once it gets to a place where I know 100% it is no longer healthy and I'm not addressing the situation. I'm just pissed now. And so that's when I'm like, hold up, Crystal. I'll actually go into the bathroom and look myself in the mirror because I have to have eye contact with myself because I'm connecting with my soul at that moment. I'm not connecting with whatever Satan has decided to uproot himself from the depths of hell. I look myself in the mirror at that moment and I'm like, yo, Crystal, like we've got to do this differently, so we're going to shut this down. We've addressed it, we've listened to it, we understand it. However, it's coming into a place where it's a little bit more chaotic than what I want to hear, and right now we're hyper-focusing. So we're going to drop it right now. I call in St. Michael. I thank him for cutting cords. I thank him for actually tying me in a bow of silver wrapping so that I'm completely protected by his love, his energy. And then also on top of that, I will thank my guides, angels, and anybody else that's a part of my life, higher helper beings, ancestors, whoever, and thank them so very much for helping me kind of set those thoughts, feelings, and whatever that I'm experiencing in that moment off to the side, so I can focus on me right then. And then I do that beautiful Louise Hay thing where I retake in my breaths. I do my cleansing breaths until I'm calm. A lot of people go, do in 4, hold 4, out 4, or 3 or 5, or whatever they do. I don't do it just that many times. I keep doing it until I'm really calmed the F down, because Crystal will continue. She doesn't give up. She's pretty stubborn that way. And so I will.
Exercise. Sometimes just
you just like breathe.
Out. Yeah, it's okay.
And then I tell myself I am safe, I am secure, and I am at peace. All is right in my world. I am safe, I am secure, I am peace, and all is right in my world. Because that's not happening. I'm standing in my bathroom looking in the mirror. That's what's happening. This hasn't happened yet. And the chances are it's never going to happen, especially the way the conversation is going in my head, because I win 100% of those fights. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to hone in and pull yourself back in some form or fashion. And it's really just trial and error until you find what works for you. Right now, Louise is working for me. And so is like talking to myself and looking myself into my soul and saying, okay, is this really what we want to do with our day? I don't know if it is, because it's just taking off way too much, and I'm not comfortable with it. So, you can't be this person if you're also being this person. So, Crystal, let's not be hypocrites in our own life, and let's try to be this person today, because that's what we're working on. And if we have to refocus energy on this at some point, we're going to do it in a more productive way, because that's not working for me right now. And that's
I love you, and I forgive you, because you've been doing this for a really long time, and we're doing that right now.
We do talk about love. We do talk about, like, we are going to forgive ourselves the same way we forgive others. We are going to love ourselves the same way that we love others. I thank myself for being alive and a part of my body, and I thank me for coming into contact with all the people. I thank the people. I give the people love. I bless them with love. Because at the end of the day, nothing's going to fix the situation if I'm doing it in a negative way. The love has got to come into the situation before there can be closure on either end, whether it be forgiveness or not. We just have to find a way to rethink about it when it stresses us out like that.
Yeah, and it's so much easier and more comfortable to talk shit to ourselves than talk love and forgiveness and healing to ourselves. Like, so you got to be patient with it. Like we were taught, so much easier. Like, oh my God, I'm the worst. I hate myself. Whatever it is. Then, like, yeah, you're great, you're kind, you got this, like, you deserve to forgive yourself. Like, it's so much more comfortable for us as humans to persecute ourselves than love ourselves, and that's a complete reflection of our society, but we're working on it.
So, like, the first time I think I actually started doing that was when I saw the movie The Help for the first time. There is a beautiful woman. You've seen that movie, right? I'm sure you have. Yeah. But one of the main characters.
It's the best.
So, like, one of the main characters, she's the one that's taking care of that beautiful little girl, and she's telling her, she's like, you are smart, you are kind, and I was like, why don't I do that to myself? Like, how many of us, first off, have anybody in our life that does that to us on a daily basis? I sure as crap didn't. To the contrary. But why don't we do that to ourselves? And after seeing that movie, I actually started doing that. And that was one of the first times that I actually started inviting praise back into my own life, was seeing it on the TV. Because I'm like, why? Look at her. What a beautiful woman taking care of this other person's child. And this other person is essentially like getting the crap that we've received sometimes in our lives. And then like you have this complete stranger essentially coming in and reaffirming No matter what happens in your life, you are beautiful, you are smart, you are this, you are that. And, we do need to do that to ourselves, uplift ourselves. And not everybody's going to do it because a lot of people weren't raised that way. So we've got to fill our own cup sometimes.
We don't have a choice. The only way you're getting out of this is if you learn how to start to fill your own cup, how to love yourself. No one else really is watching out for you. Yes, of course, if you're lucky, you have wonderful friends and family members, but they can only give so much. They can only give from an overflowing cup. If each of us learn how to take responsibilities for ourselves, which we weren't taught, which we have an entire show on Sea Goddess called Unschooled, where we're unlearning some things and reteaching some things, but we weren't taught to love ourselves and to be, super emotionally and physically independent. And it's something we're all trying to figure out and learn together. Oh, I love these comments coming in too.
I know. I just saw the one from Glenda about wanting to make a pie sometimes, and I'm like, oh, you have no clue. I still think, it would be the death of me to have a camera following me around, because if people saw how I really was, like what I really said, I am so bad. And it's not like I'm bad. I just have this snarkiness about me, and I go off on tangents sometimes, and I really say things that other people don't like. But at the same time, it's like my honesty coming to the surface, and I know this because Spirit would hold me accountable if it wasn't. But at the same time, it's like some people don't like what I have to say, and it's like, good God Almighty, I would love to make a few pies myself and drop them on doorsteps. Wouldn't that be great if we didn't get in trouble for stuff like that? I'd have to find a new way of doing it, though, because I feel like I can't take something that's already been done.
Ego journal. You can have an entire stand-up comedy career with like your ego half and the shit that comes out. Like, you have to know, like, this stuff does deserve to be channeled, and like it is like, the snarkiness is creative energy. But yeah, if you're spewing it upon somebody, my whole philosophy is like, cool in my book unless you're causing intentional harm. If you're causing intentional harm to yourself or others, then we got to talk. But if you're not like genuinely being an asshole and causing intentional harm, and that's just like really funny, and you can like harness it and journal about it or turn it into something like a creative project, like even better. Like, we're allowed to have outlets. We're allowed to be human. We're allowed to be funny and smart and humorous and sarcastic at times. But we know when we cross the line, and we know when we're intentionally hurting someone, and that's when it's not cool.
Absolutely. I call myself back in. I'm like, oh, that was probably a little harsh. I should have canceled that one. And then, I apologize. I take the time out to be like, yo, universe, this is what I said. I feel like that's probably not good, because once again, my guides always call me out. But at the same time, if people only realized how funny Spirit was on the other side, like, Spirit thinks we make so much out of bullshit here. They get over there and they're like, okay, yeah, probably shouldn't have like done this and like made focus on this. But there's so many little hiccups in life that we make big hiccups for ourselves that keep us away from like the path, and like are essentially just noise to hold us back. And so, yeah, Spirit has a lot to say about that, because it's like, what are you doing? How are you missing every sign that is being laid upon your feet? And what the hell is this going on, by the way? It's actually, one of the things this retrograde has, and I think we've talked about it a little bit. I feel essentially like I'm living in the twilight zone in 2021. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Have you ever, Mandee, I'm sure you have, and all of the people listening, you all have probably been in situations before where you're like, what the fuck is going on right now? Because every single thing that's playing out in your life is the complete opposite. So it essentially feels like you're dropped into a different reality where everything happening around you is completely opposite of what actually should justifiably be going down. And you've really done nothing wrong. So the only way you can sit back and be like, okay, so apparently I was an asshole in a past life. I have really pissed some people off, or this is just like some crazy karma coming from something maybe I haven't even done yet, and they're just getting a head start. I don't know, because what's going on right now just doesn't make any viable sense to me at all. And that's essentially what's taking place in 2021. It's just like, at this point, I have nothing more to say. I really have just like gotten to a place where I put my hands up in the air and I'm like, okay, Spirit, well played. We're good. I'm giving up. I'm done.
That state of surrender, that state of grace, when we're getting pushed into that, there's a reason for that. And, a lot of times when everything gets completely flipped around, that's our biggest opportunity to take a few breaths and say, I trust. I
I
trust
trust.
I'm doing the highest good. I trust I'm being protected. I trust that this is really shitty right now. I don't like what's happening. But you know what? I'm alive and breathing. I'm healthy and able bodied, whatever it is, and you know what? I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to observe and I'm going to breathe. I'm going to maybe go do some fucking jumping jacks or go for a run or do whatever I got to do to release this energy, harness my chi. But that is the time when we feel that surrender coming in to let ourselves, to allow ourselves to have the grace to say, okay,
Yep.
all right, let's see what's going to happen. In the meantime, I'm going to work on me. What can I control right now? Well, I can control the breathing I do. I can control if I go clean my room or go for a walk or read a book. I can do something I can control.
I love that. See, because that's how spirit teaches us. Or you have snarky people like me in your head that are like, okay, Crystal, now this is what we need to do. We can't have fear and faith in the same conversation, remember? That's a big one that they tell me. We can't have fear and faith in the same conversation. Can we? Either you trust us or you don't. You know it's working out the way it's supposed to, or you don't. So what is it? And that's one of those moments where I sit back and I'm like, touche. See, that's where they're calling me out, and that's where they're holding me accountable because it's all true. I might not, none of us need to know what the end goal actually looks like and why they're doing what they're doing. But we can also say that every time we've had a really shitty situation in our life, it's always ended up 100% better than what we thought. It may have taken a while to get there, but essentially isn't that growth? Like, that was the whole point. It was to break us free from this thing so we could move on to this thing, but without moving us forward to this thing that you've been saying for years you want. We can't do that until all of this crap goes and falls down a proverbial hole of bull crap. So you can't have it both ways, guys. We've got to work with this the way that we can work with it, and that's all that they can do. And so sometimes it's just a lot of lessons that come to us in the moment, and sometimes the biggest lesson is really the most easy one, which is what Mandee just pointed out. Trust us. It's the easiest one, and it seems to be one of the hardest ones that we have harder time with.
Path. Like I said, like maybe it's a work thing. Maybe you feel like, oh my God, I'm in alignment. This is the best job ever, or like best business. This is great. And all of a sudden it gets all taken away from you like in a day. And you're like, okay, didn't see that coming. Don't know why. Don't know what happened. Those are still the opportunities to trust. Well, you know what? I must be so loved and so in alignment that there's something better coming for me. And like,
Absolutely.
Karma thing, does it play out? Yeah, but not like totally the way we think it does, I don't think. And I think it's more about our own grace and karma biting you in the ass right now for like little things in this lifetime. Oh, you lied a bunch, or you stole this, or you did that, or you weren't fully integral, then it's probably going to come back to you in some kind of weird way, or your car is going to break down, or this or that. And you always know, and you're like, this is happening. There's a way that does get taken care of in your own sweet divine time, without anybody else even involved in it. So karma is a really interesting thing that's also very personal to each person's soul and current life experience, depending on how integral they're showing up with themselves and with their path in this time.
Yeah. So I can stop blaming karma for my life is what she's saying. That's okay, Mandee. I fully already in tune the fact that you are a guide, so it's cool. It's fine.
No, of course you can. And it is. It's an energy. The karmas and the dharmas. It's energies that we work with.
I don't know. I love karma.
Yeah.
I actually love karma if you think about it in an energetic, coming back to you type of way, because, I wouldn't be able to grow from something like, let's say that I just I bully somebody. I'm bullying somebody horribly and, whatever. I'm standing there with all these people who are like, yeah. And I'm filling my ego. But if that happens to me, automatically now I know exactly how I made that other person feel. And so it's a simple balance in life. If it doesn't make you feel good and you don't want it done to you, then don't do it to other people. It's very similar. That's what Ben and I have essentially based our whole relationship off from. If you don't want me talking to other men, then you probably shouldn't talk to other women. Simple as that. It's simple. If you want to talk to other women, that's fine. I'm open to that. That's cool. But don't be pissed when I talk to other men. It is a very, very stable type of thing, because we have to be mindful that what's good for this situation is also good for this situation. There's no middle ground here unless that's what you're going to allow in your life. And so I kind of hold everybody to this space of being okay, well, these are my boundaries. And And in life, I think it's a lot more simple than what we actually make it sometimes, because we try to justify maybe what we do and what we say and why we do and what we say, because so-and-so did this first and they were stupid and they hurt me and now I'm going to do this to them. I'm like, yeah, but isn't that kind of like, hypocritical?
Exhausting.
Because you're essentially doing the same thing that they did to you, but you didn't like it done to you, but you're giving the energy back the same way. What a waste of time. Like, what a waste. And
It's
so
just
I just,
exhausting and low vibe. Even thinking about it was like, ugh. Like just thinking
it
about the acts of doing all of that like drains you.
does. It does. Once you see differently, it does drain you. And I can understand, though, people being in the mindset of wanting, I can understand. I really can, especially like, like I talked to you about the client that I had before we hopped on tonight. I can actually understand why some people would want essentially revenge. That's part of their process. That's part of the pain. That's part of the experience that they're going through. And I'm not going to ever make somebody feel bad because they're saying that they want revenge either, especially considering what it does. If it's something stupid and little, and I say stupid like, oh, well, they stepped on my foot in the grocery store, I'm going to go and follow them and chase them down and, cause their car to wreck. Yeah, that's a little much. But if, something huge has happened in your life, and you're really struggling with moving forward yourself, we also have to love ourselves in that moment if that's something that we feel needs to be done. If that's the only justice, because I think that's part of the anger in the process of healing. And I think people need to allow themselves to have that anger. It's just, don't act on the anger, because it's really not worth it in the end, on any way, shape, or form.
Too. I totally interrupted. Sorry,
No,
because we do
you're
need
fine.
to release that anger. Half of our problems are because we don't let ourselves be primal. We don't let ourselves wail or belch or hit something or get that energy out. Like our energy is supposed to be sacred, and our anger too. And like, yeah, do you need to go punch someone in the face? Like, no. Like, of course, let's not cause bodily harm. But letting yourself release it in a healthy way is really important.
In a
And
healthy way.
you're
Yes.
pretending that it's not non-existent, never works for anybody. So I was just
No.
putting that in there a little bit for anyone listening.
Yeah, see, my ego though is 100% like, so we took the family to watch Venom last night, okay? I don't know if you've seen the first one. I'm a huge comic book person. So anything Marvel, I'm not DC, but I love Marvel and I love Venom. I came to the realization last night after watching Venom 2 Carnage that I'm essentially Venom for Ben. And I'm like, whoa, Crystal, we need to like pull the F back when it comes to certain things, because you're wanting to eat people's heads. And the chickens are no longer chickens, and chocolate are just not doing it for you anymore. And so you want to actually go and eat heads. So when you said, yeah, it's okay to act on that and do something with, I laughed, and that's why I laughed. Essentially because you're telling the wrong ego girl here to I'm like, oh, that'll never hold up in court. Mandee said I should feel it because it's part of the healing process, and so I did this instead, and I'm just joking. I'm not a violent person. But at the same time, she is completely right. You have to feel the emotions and feelings and get them out somehow, or else they're just going to stay in and they're going to explode someday, and that's going to create a whole nother battle that you have within yourself. So it's because generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't come out on who it should come out on. It comes out on somebody else who's innocent in the situation. And so we have to learn how to deal with it in the moment the best way that we can, feel it, process it, move through it, but then bring closure to it too. Just like Mandee said. And like I said, my brain apparently went in a completely different place with that. I was like, oh, okay, it's great to bite off heads. That's wonderful. We are going to do this. Karma doesn't exist. I'm just joking.
So it's funny because earlier I was flipping through Dr. Northrup's Dodging Energy Vampires, and I love this book. If you're an empath, it's Dodging Energy Vampires, an empath's guide to evading relationships that drain you and restoring your health and power. So it's amazing. And then it was funny, just today I noticed that the inside of it is all garlic, which I think is really funny because they like repel vampires, right? Garlic does. And so I had flipped, of course, to this one section where we talked about I like to call it sacred anger a lot, but Dr. Northrup calls it righteous anger. And so do you mind me reading like a paragraph or two? Because there's
absolutely.
So she refers to some monks she talked about in chapter 4 at first. She says, righteous anger. Remember the monks we talked about in chapter 4? They turned their compassion instead of expressing anger, and they got diabetes in the process. This is similar to what an empath does. Instead of leaving or fighting, the empath tries to live accordingly to spiritual practices such as loving kindness, empathic joy, celebrating the success of others, compassion, which is wanting to end the suffering of all beings, living in harmony and peace of the mind. This certainly seems not only reasonable but also laudable. But there's a big problem there but there's but but there's that big problem of our immune systems having morals. They won't allow us to bypass righteous anger when our innocence or that of a loved one is threatened. The proper response in these situations is anger and action. And if you don't act on this anger, then you become drained, tired, stressed, and all of the things that correspond rise the stress and the hormones within you. So it's really funny. She goes, take this for an example. You see that your child is about to be harmed by an adult. Your response is to get angry with the abuser and you get your child out of harm's way. When you do that, you don't say, we are all one. May all beings be free of suffering, or make excuses to the abuser. He had a difficult childhood, so I don't understand why he's taking it out on my child. No, doing any of these things would be a crime. Instead, you do what needs to be done to protect you and to protect your child. Your body acts accordingly, pumping you full of necessary energizing stress hormones to handle the situation. And once the situation has been handled, those hormone levels can return to homeostasis. So it goes on and talks more and more, but like these hormones, these feelings that are coming up through us, like they are important, and we can choose like how far, we want to let it go or let it out of us. And then we get to choose how much we want to harness it. But there is a time for righteous and sacred anger, and it's okay to embrace it or to allow it or to know that it's your moral compass guiding you back in. Like you're not supposed to, beat children and kids and things like that. It's going to trigger you. It's supposed to.
She told me about sacred anger, I think like 2 years ago. And she made me think, and then I had to look it up and I had to read about it. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I've always been very hard on myself for being, and I'm going to say it this way only because I know it comes from spirit. I'm going to say justice-based, but not like justice based on like legal word justice. There's definitely like, it's like you got to look at who the actual victim is in a situation, but also understand that nothing is black and white. Because, we have to be accountable too, and there's a lot of situations where there's a lot of justifiable, like, ugliness towards other people without taking responsibility for our own ugliness, essentially. And that just throws my soul for a loop. I don't know what the heck, but it gets me so much. And it really is, there's a lot of things that are just like more annoyances. It's not like I'm walking around pissed off all the time because of this justice and that injustice. That's not how I am. I don't really care most of the time, but it has to do a lot with children. And I've learned through understanding that it's more so, obviously, we don't want to see children mistreated and we don't want to see them have to go through some of the crap that they do. But at the same time, we also have to understand that they came in knowing who their parents were going to be, knowing what some of the situations were going to be. Yeah, it sucks for us because, once we're actually born and out, we don't remember any of that crap. And so it's hard for us to kind of put two and two together through our lives, not knowing why, when essentially we asked for it on some level anyway. But it's also hard to watch certain things go down. And it also becomes a certain place where I don't feel like people, at what point do you step in for a kid and try to change the situation of a kid? And that's one of those things that has always been a trigger for me. And it's also because I feel as though there were a lot of things that happened to me when I was a child that was also an injustice movement, and that triggers me also in seeing myself through that child's eyes. And so most of the sacred anger that I have is essentially people or grown children even being mistreated by people who are essentially calling them out 100% of the time, but not taking any responsibility at all for what they're doing. And, even like, this was a big one. Mandee will probably laugh at me for this one, and I'm sorry for everybody. Donald Trump got me. He actually got me. Because, I can get that you understand that, the stuff that he said and did probably weren't the best things to say and do. But how many of us also don't say and do the best things in our lives on a daily basis? How many of us speak before, open mouth, insert foot situation? There's a lot of us that do that, and I'm not making excuses for what he said or did. However, I can't ignore the fact that the other side isn't just as shitty. And so in my eyes and kind of how I see certain things like that, it's just one of those things that I feel like we have to learn how to see down the middle a little bit more than what we do to truly try to understand people and why they do say and act the way that they do, but also hold people accountable when essentially they're not doing it to themselves. And that's kind of where my ego steps in, and I try to bite people's heads off and justify it. Long story short, Mandee, that's my problem.
It is all divine, sister. It is all divine. Exact. Sophia said we are humans, and that her sister-in-law recommended this book. Yes.
I love that book.
Northrup is one of my I call her like my North Star, Dr. Northrup. Like, she's just one of my most favorite teachers and healers out there. She's like just an OBGYN. She even was responsible for helping create skin-to-skin contact after babies were born and all kinds of really cool things. And then she also has such magical empathic aspects to her, and she is just a North Star for women and for their bodies and for their health. And then now she's been really talking a lot more recently in the past few years about the spiritual and emotional side of things. And so that book, Dodging Energy Vampires, is just awesome. If you're an empath, check it out. If you have a hard time managing the energies of the relationships that you're in or around you, it's just a beautiful resource.
Mandee, it has been an hour and 11 minutes, and I hate to do this because I came in late, but I am a hungry girl. So I need dinner because I'm starving, and I've got about a good 15, 20 minutes before it turns into hanger. So I'm just letting you know, would you like to close this down for the night?
I would. Thank you all so much for tuning in and joining Crystal and I. Sorry we were late, but hey, it's Mercury retrograde. That's going to happen. Spirit was speaking, and that's what needed to go down. Oh, Artie Girl Carol, thank you so much for everybody who tuned in or who's catching the replay. Know that it's retrograde right now. Take a few extra beats. We're right in the middle of it. We're kind of on the hump and heading towards the other side, but it's time to just rest, review, recalibrate. If you're interested in spending some more time with me, I'm Mandee Elam. I'm an intuitive ascension guide, and you can find me on SeaGoddessHealingArts.com. We have classes and shows and all kinds of things lined up there, as well as healing services to help you along your path, and free events for the community once a month. So stay tuned with us on Facebook or Instagram or on our website. And Crystal, how can people get a hold of you if they want to follow you or work with you some more?
My actual website is midmittenmedium.com, and you can find me at Spirit Speaks with Mitten Medium on Facebook and YouTube. And I know that Mandee and her clan have a whole lot of stuff coming out, and they've got a whole lot of different channels and things that you can subscribe to and follow them on. Please get on there and share the love, like and subscribe to them, because they deserve all the love. There's a lot more beautiful, amazing people who are a part of what they're building over there, and so it's really cool to be able to see how all those things are utilized. So get on there and kind of try to scope them out, see what they're feeling, do some of the things, be a part of that show that they're doing right now, which is the retrograde, isn't it? It has to do with retrograde and learning how to retrain some of the things going on inside of your life, correct?
We do. Ursula and I are hosting a course, and actually you can still join if you want. It's $44 for 3 weeks. It started last week, and all the sessions are recorded, and it's called Reaping the Rewards of Retrograde. So it's every Wednesday night, so you can still sign up and catch the last recording and hop in for the next 2 classes. But it's all about learning how to reap the rewards and let yourself rest and refocus and recalibrate and work with these these energies and give yourself the extra time or the perspective or awareness, and to just understand that if things are going wrong, it's because there is a lesson or there is a reward of some sort on the other side of that trigger or that opportunity to heal. So
it's literally such a cool opportunity that you guys are doing that, because so many times people use like, oh, it's Mercury retrograde, blah, blah, blah. And yes, it is. It messes with everything. It really, really does, especially if you're very sensitive to energies and influxes and stuff. But at the same time, to like have people actually giving guidance and talking about it and teaching you how to utilize those energies, but also teaching you kind of how to understand what's taking place when those energies are at play. That's a beautiful thing. Empaths, I know that they're highly kind of all over the place when it comes to retrogrades, more so because it's almost like a snapback. And you can tell me if I'm reading that wrong, but how my guides have given it to me, it's almost like everything goes in reverse. And so they're almost, how they gave it to me is it's almost like things are pulling you in the opposite direction sometimes, and or it feels like things are being pulled in the opposite direction, but it's not. It's just causing you to like pull back and kind of be a little bit more in tune with yourself at those moments before taking a step forward. And so it's really just a way for us to kind of gain control, essentially, of our own things at that moment in time and put us back on track, is kind of how they gave it to me. But an empath will really be messed up by that, because it'll feel like everything's off and it'll feel like everything's mucking us up. And then you also have moons and other planetary shifts. Drink your water, empath. You are affected by everything. And so if you're dehydrated, you're going to feel like you're being pulled just like the tides. And you're going to have a hard time with that balance. So please follow Mandee and her crew, because they talk about all these amazing things. They do sounds, they do yogas, they do sound baths, they do all sorts of meditations, they do everything out there. They have every single thing that you could need to get through to the next stage of some of the energies that are taking place. So please find them all. That's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you, Mandee, so much.
You, Crystal, and yes, just like that, Ursula confirmed, just like a boomerang, we come back in order to review it. You think of it as just you stepping out, your higher self coming back and being like, woo, what was that all about? We take a higher, deeper look, and it's this kind of swirly energy, but it's happening for you to focus in and to have a different look. And Glenda, thank you so much. You were in the class. You're amazing. Thank you to everyone who joined tonight. Hey, Anita, I just saw you popped in. Oh, this has just been so wonderful. And Heather and Sophia and everybody who interacted tonight and helped make tonight be a beautiful co-creative space. We thank you.
And thank you for the people who sat off on the sidelines. We see you too. So thank you guys so very much.
And if you made a comment and we didn't respond, we're sorry. Sometimes we only see the ones on Haps and sometimes the ones on Facebook or Instagram or other places or YouTube don't always come in until after. So if we're boring you, also, we're sorry, not intentional.
It's not, we promise. But thank you so very much, Mandee, and thank you, everybody. Thank you guys for being patient with us, and thank you for understanding that I was late, and I apologize. Mandee, I hope you have a great rest of your night. Thank you for today. I needed this, I think, more than what I thought. You have a great night, guys.
You too. Bye.